Now, Mr. Raymond, the numbers are quite encouraging, but then I tend to think, because if you wake up tomorrow, you still hear that the NDLEA has seized, this tons of cannabis, this one, and to think that hard drugs, these illicit drugs, are readily available to whoever wants to. What is really the problem with the foundation? Because obviously we have people that this is their business and they still succeed in bringing this into Nigeria. Not just bringing it, they have a network, because if it's available, it means there's a network of distributors and all that. Now, what do you think is the root of the problem now?
I think the root of the problem lies with the general economic disposition of the country. There's a lot of the inflation has brought about a lot of downturn in expenses, and many people are a bit depressed with the economic situation of the country. That not being a very good reason, but at least we should find a background for why the drug users use the drugs. It's mainly because of depression, mainly because of escaping their realisms. And secondly, that brings about the dealers, the barons. The barons are the ones that the NDLEA should ramp up operations against. In as much as they are still existing and doing business, you should not sacrifice the life of the citizens on the altar of the business enterprises of these drug barons. I mean, although we have been very fortunate not to have big size laboratories that produce these drugs here. Here is just a transit point. So when these drugs come from outside, they don't really stay here. They also take off from here, but most of it still finds its way into the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. Meanwhile, the youths and the users of these drugs are left wasted, their dreams, their hopes, and that's a chunk of the society. I mean, 8 billion naira in seizures. I mean, that entails on the psychological output and help that we need to bring back these people that have been affected by this drug use. So in as much as we want to congratulate the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, we also want to encourage them to ramp up operations to make sure that these drug barons do not have a field day, and as much as possible institute and make it possible and cheap for rehabilitation of those that are using the drugs. Because if the drugs are not used as much, the sellers cannot sell as much, business cannot go in as usual.
But again, is it possible for NDLEA to completely eradicate drugs in the world without fighting, without tackling it from the bank? Because the House of Rep were so concerned about this, and then they urged them to go to different places and tackle these drugs from the bank. And then we also have issues in I think that was from Ogun State, where the governor finally realized that they had a particular forest that the leaders of the community actually sold the forest to some drug dealers where they are planting Indian hymns and all of those. So is it going to be possible for them to completely do away with this without tackling it from there?
Just like crime and just like every other negativities that we are compounded with, definitely there will not be 100%. There cannot be 100% success rate, because we are on earth, we are not yet in heaven. So while we are on earth here, we have to deal with at least that 1% of failure per se. Let me call it failure, if in the presence of 99% of success. So if they can get as much as success as they can, it will go a long way. Because first of all, if these things are not being encouraged, if these things are being fought against, with time, the perception of the community, the perception of the society is that this is really a wrong thing to do.
Let's look at quickly look at the second phase of that report. It also mentioned that armed officials would have to go in for drug tests. It means that what the implication of that statement means that some of the officers have been found wanting, meaning they are drug users in the police. So now, what is the implication of this on the citizens? Because they are meant to protect lives and properties, and if they are not in the right frame of mind, what happens to the next man?
Now that's a very big expose there, because we are just talking about the armed forces. It also cuts across the political circle. It also cuts across the banking circle. I mean, many people that you do not expect, you do not even think that they could fall susceptible to this, are heavily relying on drugs. Many of them might not be illegal drugs. It might be even over-the-counter drugs. Benylin with codeine. I mean, we knew about when the BBC reporter came to do an expose on Benylin and codeine. Many people didn't know that codeine was that abused, and it could be abused. So we do not know some other psychotropic substances that have been abused by well-meaning and high-standing members of the society, of which it has been revealed about the military. So the military, being that they are in charge of security, I think if it has to start from there, let it start from there. But I know it cuts across all spheres of the society. So it's a very big issue that we need psychological assistance from every place that it can come from, because I mean, it's going to cut down our labor force, our workforce. It's going to reduce the confidence that we have in ourselves. It's going to reduce productivity. It's also going to bring about mental diseases that we did not initially used to have. So I mean, it's something worth looking into, that it should be cut down to the barest minimum for everybody that has to go outside the country, that has to do that going to represent the federal, states or local government, has to compulsorily pass through drug tests, so that necessary help can be given, and steps can be taken to make sure that those outlets that they receive these drugs from can be curtailed to the barest minimum.
All right.